In this episode of the Unknown Side of WoW, we'll be going over a lot of scrapped content, NPC references, and even a little guide on how to get a quick little toy item. Located in Fenris Keep in the Silverpine Forest is a rare undead gnoll mob named Snarlmane. The only thing notable about this NPC during its appearance in the pre-Cataclysm world is that it had a chance to drop an axe called the Flesh Carver. During Cataclysm, the NPC was removed from the game, so you can only see it if you go play on the classic WoW servers. Now, this NPC is actually from Warcraft 3, and was the gnoll general that Sylvanas mind-controlled during her fight with Varimathras. When Sylvanas was fighting the Dreadlords in order to take control of the Undercity for the first time, she made very liberal use of mind control on leaders of various monsters in the area. That way, she could make use of their armies in order to fill her ranks more quickly. And Snarlmane was one of those monsters you took control of, where for the low price of only mind controlling a single leader, she gained a whole platoon of gnoll warriors. Now, one can assume that he died fighting for Sylvanas, and then was raised as an undead and just ran off and joined the Rothhide Gnolls in Silverpine, but we don't actually know how he ended up in this location or why he's classified as undead. But that's a pretty fair speculation based on the lore in that time period. So even from the beginning, Sylvanas was not shy about using mind control to get what she wanted, just as long as that control is not directed at her specifically. Located throughout the Maw are a whole bunch of items you can find called Maw lore items. When you find one of these items, it simply gives you a quest to turn into Venari, and that's about it. Venari will sometimes note about the things you give to her, but for the most part there's not much more to these items, despite the fact that they do call themselves lore items. However, in the beta for Shadowlands, a lot of these items did have some lore associated to them, something which is even referenced by Venari with the Tormentor's note. When you turn this particular item into Venari, she'll remark, "Quite the vivid description. I suggest you consider this a reminder of what will happen should you fail in your efforts against the jailer." However, after you accept and turn the quest in, you don't actually get any description, and Venari is saying her lines as if you had read something. And in the beta, there was quite a vivid description attached to this, which was removed when the game went live. The description I'll be showing on screen, full of a lot of technical information, so I won't be reading it verbatim. However, what it does describe is the torture process of a Kaldorei female who wound up in the Maw, with their test number 1 mentioning that the target was highly resistant to physical pain. With test number 2, they tried to use sound in their experiments by exposing her to constant gnomish tavern jigs, and the notes that it was too painful for the guards administering the test, so they gave up on it. Test number 3 was titled Force Visualizations, where it states that the test subject was forced to relive a specific moment in their life, and that this particular subject broke on their 115th viewing of the burning of Teldrassil. And then it ends off saying that they were able to extract 10 times the amount of anima through this process. Now, this particular piece of Maw lore is pretty dark, and there were other similar descriptions in some of the other Maw lore items, although all of them were scrapped from the game at launch. And the launch of Shadowlands had quite a bit of problems, as it was delayed a full month after the promised release date, and the Maw wasn't even close to being finished when they got to that initial release date. So a lot of what ended up being in the Maw at launch was done during that last month grace period they gave themselves. And it's pretty obvious to anyone who played the game at launch that the Maw was obviously not finished, and it was a pretty barren wasteland and only subject to doing a couple of daily quests. So Blizzard could have removed these Maw lore pieces because they wanted to do something with them, but then scrapped whatever ideas they had and probably didn't have the other ones finished. Or it could have been scrapped because the pieces of information we did get in the beta were pretty dark, honestly. But it fits in with the lore of the zone of being a terrible place that you don't want to go to. Algalon the Obeserver is most likely named after Algol, the demon star, which was named such because it had an inconsistent brightness, and people considered it an ill omen whenever they were able to see it. Modern astronomers were able to figure out why it had an inconsistent brightness, and it was basically because it was actually orbiting around another star, which would sometimes have it covered up and be less bright to the naked eye, which happened roughly once every 2 days. Algol is also an anagram for an early computer language, which could be why Algalon talks like he's a computer trying to reprogram something. So, when you add these two references together, you get the creature known as Algalon the Obeserver, a celestial made of stars that is also reminiscent of a robot with the way he speaks. Located in Revendreth at this spot on the map, just inside a building will be a couple of Revendreth citizens surrounding a cooking pot. And if you click on the cooking pot and have 30 infused rubies on you, a dredge will pop out, and you'll be awarded a toy item called the Muckpool Cookpot. This toy item has a 5-minute cooldown and simply allows you to create a cooking fire, which functions exactly like a normal cooking fire you can create for free, except it has a different cosmetic appearance. Infused rubies can be obtained by just killing creatures in Revendreth, or through daily events if you're part of the Venthyr Covenant. And obtaining 30 rubies could take a while, but really should not be that difficult to obtain if all you're trying to do is get 30 of them for this one item. And now, for some information about the earliest versions of the game. Did you know there were plans to have another event similar to the opening of gates of the AQ40? According to a Blizzard developer who worked on the original vanilla WoW, there were plans to have a huge quest chain where Warlock players were needed to perform a collection effort in order to rebuild Medivh's spellbook and performing a ritual to open the Dark Portal. And the players on the server would have to protect the Warlocks from enemy attacks that were coming through this portal. Just like the AQ40 event, it would require the whole server to collect a whole bunch of resources, plus have a long quest chain in order to unlock the required item, and culminate with a day-long event centered around Warlocks doing something useful, while everyone else was playing second fiddle and had to help them out. And the event was supposed to herald the coming of either the Burning Crusade expansion, Naxxramas, or some unknown raid after Nax. The reason we don't know what it was really meant for was because the whole event was cancelled after they saw how the gates of the AQ40 event went, and how most of the realms were just unplayable during the day-long event because they didn't have the technology in order to hold that many people in one zone at a time. Even in classic WoW, they had problems with this server lag during the recreation of the event, and this was after almost 20 years of technological advancements. So, it's pretty easy to see why they canceled the second event and never tried another event like this again. The AQ40 server-wide collection event was the first and last time they did something like this, and they kept all other events similar, really small in scale, like empowering one of 3 towers on the Broken Isle during Legion. In the beta version of World of Warcraft, before the auction house was implemented, there was a primitive auction house add-on called Auto Trade, which came bundled with a whole bunch of other add-ons as part of the Cosmo UI package, which was needed in order to have a second action bar before they made that a default feature. And basically, what the add-on did was allow you to post an item to the Auto Trade server. Then, other people who had the add-on could see the item you had posted and then choose to buy it. In which case, the add-on would notify you that a buyer was found, and it would designate a meeting place for you to get together in order to trade the item. As originally, the WoW team wanted World of Warcraft to have a completely face-to-face trading system, as that's what it was like in EverQuest, and they wanted the game to be a lot more social, and not allow people to just buy stuff from people who were offline. Although since the add-on was so popular, the dev team kind of relented, as stated in the WoW diary book. As according to John Statz, one of the game designers of original WoW, the development team was kind of split on whether they wanted person-to-person exchange of goods or an anonymous offline auction house. But the popularity of the add-on is what tipped the scales in favor of establishing the auction house eventually. And he also goes on to note that it was kind of disconcerting that they were changing the game because they couldn't prevent players from implementing their own systems to circumvent what they wanted players to do. So, if you enjoy not having to run to people in order to trade things manually for everything, you can thank the Cosmo team for implementing the Auto Trade add-on.